So my talk mainly based on the recent publication which was published in 2020 May, uh, the AIDA guideline for the COVID patient in OR. So as Amit has already discussed, the concern of airway management, that is high viral load and spread of virus during airway management because of aerosol. So apart from safe airway management, we need to take precautions to prevent transmission of virus. And at the same time, we need to take proper precautions for a proper disposal of single-use item and to decontaminate the reusable items to prevent spread to healthcare workers in OR. So it has been subcategorized from patient management, team preparation, OR preparations, actual step of airway management, then troubleshooting, and special features, special concern about the use of supraglottic airway, using different airway gadget in minor procedures, and electrical intubation. I'm going to take this one by one. I think this is little bit of duplications between my talk and Dr. Goswami's talk. First, we need to prepare a patient. So whenever you do a PSC, always do a PSC with optimal PP. And when you are shifting the patient to the OR, patient should have surgical mask on his face. As Amit has already described the reason of wearing a mask for a patient. And do not hold the patient in any holding area. Directly transfer the patient from outside to OR room. An important thing is that it's recommended to use betadine gargle at least 30 to 45 minutes prior to the surgery. Significantly reduces the oropharyngeal and nasopharyngeal viral load. So use betadine gargle 0.2 to 1% and also nasal drop, which significantly reduces the viral load of the patient when patient is in the OR. And as already discussed, there should be a minimum number of anesthesiologist team member. And there should be a proper briefing of the what is the patient concerns, what is the role of individual anesthesiologists to define. There should be a defined airway management plan and rescue strategies before making entry into the OT. And it's very difficult to make a communications with the full PPE on. So always define and discuss the communication method before entering into the OT. So as already discussed, this thing also, okay, what should be there in the OR? But ideally there should be a 2 HME filter. One should be at the distal end of the circuit, and second is at the extremity end of the circuit. And the side stream capnography should be between the circuit and distal HME filter. Then other mandatory requirement, video laryngoscopy is must. We must have closed suction unit, surgical cricothyrotomy set, and by airway cart just outside the OR, and it should be easily accessible area, in accessible area. So whenever we require, we can directly take the airway cart inside the OR. Why we are not keeping the airway cart in the OR? Because it contaminates the devices during the airway management or during the airway handling. And plastic drape or COVID box, will discuss the detail about the pro and cons of the COVID box at the later half of this session. And there should be a proper disinfectant solution with the container. And we are regularly using 1% hypochlorite, sodium hypochlorite solution. So coming to the step of airway management, specifically intubations, starting from pre-oxygenation to induction, apneic oxygen, fecal intubation, and decontamination. So always take the patient in with the face mask, surgical face mask on. And there should be minimal time gap between the removal of surgical face mask and application of our ventilating mask. And always check filter attached to the circuit and side stream connects of the side stream capnography. This is the video how we are doing in our clinical practice. There is a minimal time gap between the removal of the surgical face mask and application of nasal oxygen mask for ventilation. And once we keep the mask, we are covering that mask and filter with the surgical drape or with the transparent plastic drape to prevent the spread of aerosol. So always pre-oxygenate the patient with 100% oxygen for 3 to 5 minutes using tight fitting face mask seal as shown in the figure with two-hand technique with tidal volume breathing using a closed circuit. Always pre-oxygenate a patient with same technique with the closed circuit. If you are pre-oxygenating a patient with the open circuit, there are likely chances of spread of virus through the open circuit. Avoid using HFNO and NIV, and pre-oxygenation should be monitored with the EtCO2 waveform. If you are getting triangular waveform, it's suggestive of there is a leak inside the mask. So always monitor the efficacy of pre-oxygen through a EtCO2 waveform. And this is the grip we should use during the pre-oxygenation. Always is rapid sequence inductions and choice of muscle direction during induction to facilitate intubation. It should be faster onset of action with the muscle direction, so means succinyl choline or rocuronium, because it provides the faster onset of relaxation and which decreases the time of exposure by facilitating the intubation fast. Avoid three-quarter and see, try to avoid mask ventilation as far as possible. But what happens in the COVID patients with the lung involvement, there is significant reduction in the lung volume as well as FRC, and they tend to desaturate very fast. So you may have to ventilate the patient. So if mask ventilation is required, it should be performed either under the COVID box or under the transparent plastic sheet using a two-hand technique. This is the way you should hold the mask during the mask ventilation, two-hand technique, and optimally fitting the mask underneath the transparent plastic drape. During OR, management of patient in OR, however, the evidences are changing. When we publish these articles, we have recommended to avoid the HFNO in OR during the apnea. You can safely use low flow nasal oxygen at least less than 5 liters per minute during apnea. So during tracheal intubation, video laryngoscopy is mandatory because of two reasons. Because it increases the first pass success, and second, it increases the proximity of our face from the patient face. And another thing, you can, whenever you are using video laryngoscopy, always prepare video laryngoscopy in a proper way. Always, if you are using non-channel one, prepare the endotracheal tube with the stellate, and if you are using channel, load the endotracheal tube with through the channel and use it. This will minimize the time and minimize your exposure time. And few study which has been published in Airway Journal, the non-channel video laryngoscope significantly reduces the time of intubations. So it reduces the exposure time also. And after intubation, always attach a filter first, inflate the cuff, and then start ventilating a patient. Do not start ventilating a patient without inflation of cuff or without the HME filter. And confirmation of endotracheal tube should be done with the capnography only, because respiratory matter is not possible with the full PPE on. And when you want to suck out through the endotracheal tube, always use closed suction unit. So coming to the awake tracheal intubation in anticipated difficult error, should we go for it or should we not go for it? So as far as possible, we should avoid, but it's the indication for going for a awake tracheal intubation. And if you're having choice of doing either with VL or with FY, then awake VL should be given preference because it's taking less time of intubation compared to awake FY, and it minimizes the exposure time. The another limitation of FY is that during airway anesthesia, if you are using Sprague technique, it takes a lot of time and patient is going to cough. So again, it's aerosol generating. You are exposing yourself for a longer period of time and it increases the risk. So airway block is a feasible method. You can give the airway block underneath the plastic sheet to the patient. And always discard single-use item immediately in the appropriate disposable bag. And reusable items should be dropped into the container with disinfectant solution without touching elsewhere, as shown in the video. So now, many times disconnection is happening. So once you intubate a patient, always cover with the plastic sheet. So if disconnection is happening, it's under the plastic sheet. And intentional disconnection to be done, then it should be done. Keep the filter attached with the endotracheal tube and disconnect. And use closed suction unit for endotracheal suctioning. So not to be done during airway management in OR, mask ventilation, try to avoid, HFNO, try to avoid, disconnection should not be there, don't do open tracheal suction, airway exchange procedure during extubation should not be done, needle cricothyrotomy or cannula with jet ventilation should not be done, and as I have already mentioned that few evidences are changing day to day. So during that time, we are also not advising to do a nebulizer. Now, there are a lot of queries about the supraglottic airway. When to use supraglottic airway in COVID patient in OR? So if you look at this Australian guideline, UK guideline or Italian guideline, it has been recommended to use second generation device if indicated. But when you are using second generation device, avoid positive pressure ventilations which lead to aerosol generations. And if you are taking longer time for intubation or if immediate intubation is not possible, so apart from FMB is a better option to insert a supraglottic airway because it is less aerosolizing compared to face mask ventilation. This can be used as a rescue device. And use of bronchoscope for an exchange of a SGA for a tracheal tube is not an aerosol generating event when performed in a profoundly paralyzed apneic patient without positive pressure ventilation. So now coming few slides over the COVID box. Should we use COVID box during intubation or not? Few are saying yes, few are purely saying no, and few are saying maybe we can use. Let's discuss on the evidence. What are the evidences? So when we are thinking of using COVID box, our objectives first, it decreases the risk of contamination or it increases the intubation difficulty. On these 2 points, we need to decide whether to use COVID box or not. So look at these very interesting publications. In the conclusion of these publications, it slightly increased the intubation time, but is not clinically relevant. So you can use COVID box. Another publications in GOSCP, there is no scientific evidence of prevention of transmission of virus if you are using COVID box. There is no standardized recommendation about the dimension of the COVID box. And if you are using COVID box, there is a limited space and limited head movement, which increases the intubation difficulty. And still aerosol can escape from the box. These are the concerns of using aerosol blocks. So should we use or not? Still there is a confusion. So this is another very interesting publication in July only. With the particulate matter detector, they have detected the particle size less than 2.5 micron with the simulations. And this is the figure without COVID box. During pre-oxygen, they found there is aerosol generation. My cursor is moving. And in compared to those patients who are those simulations where they have used the COVID box, the aerosol are more in the box. So this suggests that if you are using COVID box, most of the aerosol are confined to box. And if you are not using aerosol box, the most of the aerosol are spreading everywhere and infecting most of the OR staff. But what are the limitations of this study, or what we need to think of? Look at this. Suppose this is an patient lying on the table, and this is an anesthesiologist. When patient is generating aerosol, it's like this, everywhere across the table, and it's going to contaminate the anesthesiologist also and nearby staff also. Now we are keeping a COVID box. Now aerosols are confined to this space only, so which definitely prevents the contamination of anesthesiologist. But what happens once we remove the aerosol box? This aerosol now we are removing. So now spread of aerosol are highly depend on the OR flow of air. Suppose AC has been kept in front of anesthesiologist, like in this figure, and flow of air is like this. Then once you remove this box, this aerosol is going to contaminate the anesthesiologist. So this is the way you should think of when you are using aerosol box. When you are removing, then where should be your position? Now we'll take another scenario. The flow of air is coming from the side of the box. Now we are removing after intubation, we are removing the box. So this flow of air is going to spread in this way. So the OR staff who is standing on the side of the patient is going to get contaminated. And if you look at this, if suppose most of the OR are now having laminar flow, so flow is coming from up and directly going parallelly down. So in such patient, in such OR where there is a laminar flow of air is from upside down. So once you remove the aerosol blocks, all the aerosol, just a minute. All the aerosol are going to go down. So when you are using laminar flow, the flow is like this. It's coming from up, going down, and then absorbed from the side. So when any OT is having laminar flow, which prevent the contamination by settling down the aerosol downward on the surfaces and getting absorbed from the side. So this is how we should have to think. Okay, if you're using aerosol blocks, what are the from OT flow, where to where it is going, and according to make your position and your staff position. But because in our India, all OR are not having laminar flow, many of us are using split AC. So according to flow of AC, you should keep your position to prevent contamination. So another way out is to suck out all the aerosol from the aerosol box. So if you keep a suction on, then most of the aerosol is going to remove from the box, and then you can remove. But what should be the pressure? What should be the capacity of the suction? That is very important. So if you do, most of our COVID box is 2 by 2 by T is 8 cubic feet per cubic CFM, cubic foot, 8 cubic foot. So if your suction capacity is more than 6 times of actual capacity, means if containment area of the COVID box is 8 cubic feet, then your suction power should be 6 times more. Means it should be 48 cubic feet per meter sucking power should be there. Then the suction should be able to decrease the viral load less than 1% in this containment area. This is very interesting publication. There they have suggested how to clear the aerosol rapidly. So look at this graph. So what they did, they have kept a suction this is the suction unit, and they have kept a tube inside the COVID box. And they have compared, this is the cubic meter of the aerosol, and this is the time of aerosol clearance. If you look at the blue line, so they, in that case, they didn't apply any de-aerosolization, means they have not applied the suction. And look at the clearance is happening at 8 to 9 minutes after the aerosol stop producing in the COVID box. And if you apply wall suction, still it takes 3 to 4 minutes to clear the aerosol in that aerosol blocks. And if you keep the 60 CFM cubic feet per cubic foot minute de-aerosolation by that power of suction, then hardly half a minute, 30 seconds is required to clear all the aerosol. So this is how you can make practical use of COVID box in your clinical scenario. I think I'm skipping this air exchange part because it's already been discussed by Dr. Jyotsna. So this is very interesting systemic review just recently published. Whatever you do, you are using COVID box or not using COVID box, using plastic sheet or not using plastic, what is your savior? What is going to prevent the contamination is PP, PP, PP and PP, nothing else. So do not handle their way without optimal PP. Thank you.
The problem is
very happy,
that Amit Bhai mentioned this early on was if you don't have positive pressure and you then you have the split air conditioning system, I think then is the real challenge. There have been several ways that people have described about creating a negative sump, but then that is not very environment friendly. And otherwise opening the rooms, windows, etc., and doing that.
Another thing about the split AC, so working in the closed air environment with the split AC is the most dangerous thing, because what split AC does, it always absorbs the air from the OR complex, OR only, and then it's again throwing into the OR. So it's always recirculating. So we are not cleaning the viral load from the OR if we are using the split AC.
And one thing, if it is in main water complex and it is a central air conditioner is there, then I think it should be closed. Air conditioner should be stopped for at least for the procedure of aerosol generating procedure. That moment of time.
Central air conditioning is again dangerous because it's going to contaminate the other also.
Yes.
No, I think
yes, but if there is no provision, then that case.
I would just comment on this, Jyotsna, is that if there is a positive pressure laminar flow in the operating room, and the operating room in which you are conducting COVID positive patients, and you also have a facility where you are doing COVID non-positive patients, that is the cleaner ones, ensure that the air handling unit of that operating room is separate from the rest of the operating rooms.
Yes.
That's the first thing that you kind of decide before you designate a COVID positive. And do not, if it is positive pressure laminar flow with at least a 20% fresh air flows with each cycle, I think you should not be closing down the air conditioning at any point of time.
Yes. That is the ideal thing. That is what we need to do. Increase the air changes.
After extubation, after shifting the patient, you should continue with the air changes up to 6 air changes.
Even during intubation, if you continue your air exchange, the viral load in the atmosphere will continue to go out into the HEPA filter. So you should not stop the laminar airflow.
Yes.
So next question, shall I go, Shekhar?
Yeah.
Next question from Gargi. Actually, if many places we don't have the capnogram, so how to check bilateral air entry? Will we check with the stethoscope, or what should we do?
See, ideal way, the ETCO2 is mandatory for confirming endotracheal. There is no other alternative for that. So if you don't have ETCO2, get the ETCO2. That is first thing. And second thing, if you are confirming the endotracheal tube placement by using a stethoscope, by removing the mask or removing the shield, means you are risking yourself. So don't do that thing. Don't do that thing. Get the ETCO2. That's the only option.
But supposingly, even if you then actually it is all administrative problem, because obviously if you cannot get it, I can understand the question that ETCO2 is not available at times in remote places. I can understand. So then the only option which is left to you is you don't risk yourself. So what you do is if you have a ventilator, attach to a ventilator and see the chest expansion. That's the only thing which you have, because you cannot risk yourself. So better not to risk yourself. And then obviously this is the only option which is left to you.
Yes, Mohit. Mohit is right. You can use the expiratory parameter of ventilator to judge the placement. Like you can use the flow volume loop, expiratory tidal volume, but don't risk yourself.
Exactly.